8 hours. We're gonna do 2 sessions.
We are live now, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. We got to do a full Guilds of Ravnica review.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, commons, uncommons, rares, and mythics.
Can we just do like a parts 1 through 6 or something? Or even better, we can do like a return to Eternal Weekend prep, or Guilds of Eternal Weekend prep. All right, hey everybody. My name is Sean. Lone Star Lhurgoyfs here. We're bringing you another podcast, kind of talking about. I think a lot of us are going to Eternal Weekend in Pittsburgh, hosted by Card Titan. That's going to be November 1st, I want to say, to November 4th. Yeah, and so right. Yeah, I think at this point, if you haven't made travel preparations, it's kind of on the late end. But for anybody who's like on the fence about it and still considering it, highly recommend you go. Mostly everyone here's favorite Eternal event of the year, especially since we have a lot of vintage guys, and so you know we're just gonna kind of give some thoughts on that and how the Eternal formats have been looking recently. But very quickly, does everyone want to introduce themselves?
I'm Will.
Start with Will.
I play a lot of Commander. I used to play Legacy until job schedule kind of really messed with that. So just play a lot of Commander and Proxy Vintage lately.
Yeah, and Will is good at Magic. Like he plays mostly Commander these days, but like
take competent.
No, don't sell yourself short. You're good at Magic. He's a little bit humble, but you know he's back in the day he used to put up tournament results and stuff, and I've lost my fair share of times to him. I guess Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, this next guy is not good at Magic, but
oh my god,
he does well. No, thanks for having me on, guys. I would say that next to playing Magic, talking about Magic, I don't know, talking about Magic might actually be more fun to me. And it's kind of hard to punt when you're just talking about Magic, but I'll try doing it right now. I really think that Merfolk and Legacy is the best well-positioned deck, and I'm expecting a good tournament for me in the Legacy branch.
That is totally going to get people to sign off of this podcast immediately.
Merfolk? That's like in Legacy? What year is this?
Dude, Tim, you better be careful. People are going to be like, oh man, it's that Tim guy. Let me slip in my sideboard Luan Cephalid Empress.
Yeah.
Bring it. And I think it actually is well positioned, and maybe we can get into specifics later on why I think that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely spend some time talking about that. But real quickly, last guy, do you want to take a turn?
Yeah, I'm Stu. I've been on this podcast a lot, so you guys are probably aware of me and are tired of my voice at this point. But yep, I'm Stu. I'm the Austin representative for this episode. Yeah,
and for those of you who don't know, Stu recently had a baby daughter?
Yeah, that's true. New parent. My daughter is named June. She was born a month ago at this point. Month ago today, actually. It's a 1-month birthday.
So she was born in September and named June?
Yeah, it's brutal.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who are wondering, you can have it all. A family, a lovely daughter, and Stu owns power. So, I mean, I don't know what else there is in life. I think you've won already. Leave something for the rest of us, yeah?
Hell yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right.
So, I think tonight, I know Sean, Tim, and I are all going to Eternal Weekend. Will, you're not going, are you?
No, I'm not going to be able to make it.
Okay, so you're just our Commander representative.
Yep.
What is the Commander metagame going to look like at Eternal Week?
So much Ravnica. There's like 20 new generals.
This is just 4 different people on Blue, Red, Niv, Mizzet, and they're all playing different commanders.
Yeah, we switched to Joyra.
You switched to Joyra, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I hope nobody draws a card ever.
Like
triggers. So many triggers.
Well, that's a good preamble. Sean, you want to get everything underway here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I guess a very quick introduction. My name is Sean. I had to go to Eternal Weekend last year. I don't have a baby daughter, and I don't think Merfolk is the best deck in Legacy. So I have no defining characteristics. But yeah, let's get a couple things started. I think Legacy is a good place as I need to start. If you guys... Yeah. So... a lot of things have kind of shaken down since our last podcast. That, for those of you who don't remember or didn't tune into that one, we were talking about Death Ray Shaman and Taxiing Pro. And we had a couple of predictions at the time, sort of talking about, we had our levels, like level 1, Grixis Delver as we know it kind of changes. And then level 2, the decks that were held down by Grixis Delver and those other top dogs, Check Pile and stuff, kind of, get a little bit better as well. And then, of course, you kind of get levels beyond that, like what fights the level 2 decks, what fights the level 3 decks, so on and so forth. I think we're far enough out from that at this point. Like, the meta is still stabilizing in some ways, and we're still seeing some really awesome decks pop up from here and there. Like, the one, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the one that Jody Keith top-8'd in the Team Constructed event recently, it was like a green, colorless lands post-hybrid deck, and that was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. Like, you get to do these crazy things like you're playing 4 Candelabra of Tawnos, 4 Cloud Posts, and you have like 3 Maze of it in the deck. Somebody's like, I'll attack you with 4 creatures. You're like, great. I'll maze 3 of them, activate Candelabra of Tawnos, untap all my mazes, and maze the last one. And it's like, I don't know, how does a fair deck ever beat this? You have enough mazes to hold off like young Pyromancer and his entire posse or whatever. But that's just an example, And so stuff like that is still popping up, even though I think, I don't know how you guys have had it in Austin, but, I think our top decks are going to be like Grixis. Control has been really big. Miracles has been pretty big. Blue-Black Shadow, of course, is like another one of the big players. And then I think like a step below that, you've got a lot of stuff like, I think Red-Green Lands has fallen off a little bit, but then like your Sneak and Shows and your Reanimators and your different flavors of Delver. And so all of those kind of seem like competitive decks at this point. And I think those are all sort of fixtures of the meta to come.
Yeah, which is funny because I re-listened to that last episode where we were talking about the BNR, and I think and I'm not trying to throw shade on you guys. I wasn't on the episode. Trying to predict a new meta is not an enviable task, but I think you guys were like, well, Death Shadow is just dead without Captain Probe. Grixis Delver is dead. Rug Delver is going to be the new king, and D&T is going to take a long time to get good, and Miracles maybe is going to be good, but yeah, it's
dude, that is. I don't think you could be more wrong if you tried. That's
that's
pretty bad.
But I mean, that's again, that's such an unenviable thing to have to do, to sit down and predict a meta after a ban, because obviously everyone's instinct is just like, oh, let me rewind to 2012 and figure out what was good then, and we'll just say that's going to be good,
right?
Which has not been the case.
Yeah, and a lot of people kind of thought, myself included, definitely, I thought that was going to be the case. It's like, what did the metagame look like before Deathrite Shaman? And then, obviously, I think Probe was printed after that, right? Or before? In any case, Cataxian Probe.
No, Probe was before.
Probe was before? Okay. So,
after.
Yeah, and I guess, the biggest question would be, what would the meta look like before, Deathrite Shaman was even printed? And then we kind of thought, we would go back to 2012, pre-Return to Ravnica, pre-Abrupt Decay Deathrite Shaman. And then, of course, we didn't stop to consider, since then we've had, True Name Nemesis was printed, Urmog Angler was printed, Baleful Strix was printed,
Kolaghan's Command.
Kolaghan's Command was printed, even Leovold to an extent. I know he's not seeing as much play anymore, but with the printing of Assassin's Trophy, I think, well, that's probably a topic for a little bit later down the podcast, but I think we're going to see a resurgence of Bug. And here we are making predictions again, and we'll probably be completely wrong. But
yeah, well, the thing is also, we were framing a lot of that discussion around printings, but there's also just been kind of evolutions or advancements in how people think about Magic. I mean, I feel with every year it gets more sophisticated, or at least the current paradigm will change. So again, it was easy to just say, oh, what was printed before 2012? Let's look at that meta. Whereas maybe how people's understanding of what's an effective strategy is different now than it was 6 years ago.
Stu, can you expand on that a little bit?
No, that's I have no more depth than that.
Well,
yeah,
I think I know what Stu's getting at, though.
Son of a I'm genuinely curious.
Okay,
I'm here asking you to teach me how to fish.
No, it's just I think this discussion comes up in every format basically, and I just feel you can't ever go back. And people talk about in Vintage, for instance, if Mental Misstep got restricted, or maybe a better example is let's say something got restricted out of workshops. I feel people's natural inclination is to be oh, Ravager's restricted, workshops is going to become more prisony, but if Ravager got restricted, maybe they've already learned that the best way to play shops is low to the ground and aggro. So no one's going to go back to playing like Martello shops instead. So
Okay.
I think there's an interesting example. I think one thing that really stood out to me in Legacy was when Deathright Shaman was kind of at its heyday. I think like post top banning, pre-probe Deathright Shaman banning, you had a lot of check pile running around. And one of the things that like really stood out to me as like one of the hallmarks of check pile was that it did not run 4 lightning bolts. And at the time, that was not something you did. If you were a lightning bolt deck, you would play the full 4 up. Like I hate to use a term like sacred cow status, but like I think that's kind of what it had. It was like we would never consider cutting this. We would never consider going down to like less than 4 unless we're like not a deck that wants bull or unless we're like not playing red. And then all of a sudden like check pile comes in and it's like, oh yeah, we're just playing like 2 to 3 of every card, 4 brainstorms, 4 ponders, and then a bunch of like cantrips and ways to filter through our deck so that we can always find what we want. And I think that was the right way to build check pile. Fast forward a little bit, we're at Grixis Control now, and I think that's one of the lessons they picked up. Stu, you're talking about like sort of these like evolving paradigm shifts and like how we perceive the metagame. I think before check pile had ever become a deck, nobody had ever considered playing like less than 4 lightning bolts. And then now there's a pretty defensible case for it. I think Grixis Control wants to play some number because obviously things like Bolt, Snap, Bolt are really great ways to close out games. But at the same time, they're not your best removal spell, especially not since something like Fatal Push has been printed. And so if you only have like 4 to 5 slots for like 1-mana removal spells, it makes total sense to split them between Fatal Pushes and Bolts as like a 3-2 split instead of like a 4-1. So.
Another way to think about it is just like people used to think Merfolk was good, and now it's never going to be good.
Throw shade.
I like a bunch of 4-ups in my deck because I don't want to be spending a bunch of time cantripping, so I need to draw all those sweet spells, and so I need to have 4-ups in my deck.
Have you considered running like 8 Silverkill Adepts?
That'd be pretty. Yeah, that'd be
just
nice.
Like filter through your deck a little bit quicker and hope nobody notices.
No, the art's different now. It's totally okay.
Yeah.
Like 4 of them in a different language.
Well, now that we've gone down that rabbit hole, do we want to get back to Eternal Weekend?
Yeah. So one thing I did want to ask you guys, which I kind of forgot to do, but what have you guys been playing recently? I think now's a good time. This is sort of pick up where we left off. We definitely had our thoughts about the bannings, but I mean, here we are 2.5 months later. How does everybody think the metagame looks, and what are you playing these days?
And I was talking with Ben about this the last Legacy day we played. I was like, every day that passes by, I get cooler and cooler with the probe banning. And I had been trying to play Storm every once in a while, and I bring out Belcher every once in a while just for some kicks. But so I played with Gitaxian Probe, and it was a really cool card in Storm. And when it got banned, I was kind of bummed. I was like, they didn't have to hit that, just hit the Deathright Shaman and everything will be fine. But as it goes by, I'm just so happy to not start a game with your opponent that is playing Grixis or check pile or whatever. Always has the probe in perfect knowledge, perfect information. So I don't know. I'm glad it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you playing these days?
So I've been playing a lot of sorry. I've been playing so I'm planning on playing Merfolk at the Legacy event. So I have been almost exclusively playing that for the last 3 months or so. I've been playing around with quite some different stuff in Vintage. I think I'm gonna just have some fun and play some land grant tropical island Belcher
in Vintage.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
Ask Will how.
Well, I don't know if it's a thing, but it exists.
Oh, God.
All right, Stu, what about you? Because you're also heading to Eternal Weekend, and I think you and Tim are both playing Legacy and Vintage both.
Yeah, I'm planning on playing Legacy, but I haven't been playing it. Obviously, in the past month, I just like going out to Thursday nights is just like not an option with a newborn. But even in the period before that, it was kind of like, so the other thing I listened to in advance of this call was our recap of Eternal Weekend last year. And in that, I was saying that for the few months before Eternal Weekend, I had been really lukewarm on Legacy. And I've felt that way ever since last Eternal Weekend, too. So I guess I've been lukewarm on Legacy for like the better part of a year now. So I haven't been playing it that much. But when I do play it, I generally play Maverick, which is a deck that I think is like, generally you can show up in a lot of metas and do okay with Maverick. And it wasn't like hugely warped by the bans. So I've only had to like tweak my main deck a little bit since Deathrite got the axe. I've been trying to adjust my sideboard to like what the current metagame looks like, but for the most part I've been kind of checked out of the format, so it's just I'm gonna show up and hope for the best with it. But I've been playing a lot of Vintage lately, and I've been playing a number of different decks, but I'm gonna play White Eldrazi in Champs. So last year at Eternal Weekend, that's exactly what I did. I played White Eldrazi in Champs for Vintage and Maverick and Legacy, so I'm just gonna run it back this year.
Was Thorn still unrestricted last year?
Nope, it was restricted.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and my build last year, that was like I think my first time playing the deck, and it was really bad because I didn't know how to construct it very well, and I had 4 Moxen, so I didn't have a Lotus or all 5 Moxen. So yeah. I went 5/5. I'm confident / hopeful that I can do better this year. But there haven't really been any meaningful new printings or restrictions for Eldrazi since last year.
Yeah, they need to quit making badass Eldrazi and Eldrazi enabling lands and shit like that. They're
yeah, I suspect they're never going to do those again, but we'll see.
I think we might go back to Innistrad at some point in the future, and they'll break Emrakul out of that moon.
Yeah.
They'll just be like, emerge. Oh, this is going to be good.
Or maybe they'll bring back Gitaxian mana.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, like Phyrexian Cross Eldrazi set, and it's like, yeah, you can pay like 4 generic mana, or you can pay 8 life for this. Like, oh, not serious. Like, wait a second.
Let's talk to multiverse if that ever happens.
Yep, so that's my plan for it. All my mental energy has been going towards Vintage prep, but I need to try to like jam some Legacy games and study the meta a bit more to make sure I'm at least boarded correctly and things like that.
Right. And I do want to talk to you sometime before Eternal Weekend, because I have a lot of questions about Maverick, and I think that especially with like the latest printings coming from Guilds of Ravnica, there's a lot of interesting new toys that you potentially have access to.
Yeah, well, if you want to hit me up, I'm generally awake from like midnight to 2 when June needs to eat and then be rocked back to sleep. So
yeah, I'll pencil you in for a 1 a.m. brainstorm session. But yeah, sounds good. Will, what have you been up to? I know you're not going to Eternal Weekend, but I think you play a lot more Vintage than I do, and you probably have a better idea of what that metagame looks like.
I've been waffling back and forth between not Tron, workshops. A good version of Tron. I'm part of the problem. My beta was like half Tron yesterday.
Jeez.
So many workshops, so many artifacts. And the goal was no one gets to play Magic. But I've been waffling between that, Grixis, Welder, and Dredge. Because I'm just a terrible person. As far as Legacy, since the Deathrite ban happened, I've been messing around with a bunch of Pox lists. Just because now you don't have to worry about your Nether Spirit being sniped out of the graveyard at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of really glad like Nickfit doesn't have to worry about all their little recursion creatures. Recurring Nightmare gets to be a thing again. Vorath Stronghold doesn't have to worry. Mm-hmm. Though it does kind of hurt them because they also played Deathrite Shaman. So there's just more mana fixing for their extreme mana budget. That's just gross. You want to play 6 drops in turn 4.
Right. And I think like there was always that weird, like, I don't know, certain decks definitely leverage Deathrite Shaman better than others. And at the same time, certain decks definitely like were a lot better about beating Deathrite Shamans than others. You know, like I played Rector Fit for a while, the Nick Fit version with Academy Rector, and you couldn't resolve a Rector trigger while Deathrite Shaman was in the meta. It just never happened. And it didn't matter that you, like, I guess that version didn't play like Deathrite Shamans, but like it didn't matter if you got to play your own versus like Grixis Delver. It's like, yeah, I'm going to start eating cards out of your graveyard. It's like, great. You delayed their Gurmag Angler by like half a turn or something, you know?
Nick Fit definitely gained a lot more than lost from their 2 copies they played, usually. Like, they just don't have to worry as much game 1. Like, sometimes, like, people siding Graveyard Hate or Scavenging Ooze or that kind of stuff. Also, like, my favorite, like, little pet deck was Bombardment. I loved that deck.
Oh, yeah.
And that just could not exist while so many people are, like, playing a bunch of Deathite Shaman's main board. Like, every spell like flashback, every creature recurred from the yard. It just couldn't happen.
I don't actually know what Bombardment is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask.
Oh no.
Just the best.
It's been around since like 2012, but I know Sam Black
token deck. You play Goblin Bombardment, so you can shoot dudes at people for 1 damage, but you play a bunch of creatures that recur from the yard, Bloodghast and Gravecrawler. So they just keep coming back. Some zombies for value, and that also recur your Gravecrawlers. That black-white artifact dude from Alara who gets to Thoughtseize people.
Scholar.
Yep.
Scholar.
Gentleman and a scholar.
He is. He's the cute little boat.
Will, does it play that new Stitcher supplier?
Oh, yeah, it's nuts. Stitcher Supplier is the stone cold nuts. It's a zombie. It puts dudes in your yard. It's 1 black mana. You can sack it. Cabal Therapy on the flashback to mill more cards into your yard. It's just the best.
Yeah, that's sick.
Sounds like Ancestral Recall, but color shifted to black.
And half their spells are also flashback spells. We get Lingering Souls for tokens, Faithful Fluting for some card filtering in selection, and Cabal Therapy. Personally, probably my favorite card that's not a creature in all of Magic.
Well, listen.
That's an excellent choice for favorite card.
Listen, if you want to shell out for a plane ticket to Pittsburgh, I'm sure we can put together some Bombardment for you.
I can't do it, and I just took like a week off of work in summer to go to a wedding, and I can't do it.
Yeah. Weddings are the worst. Anyway, I know some of us are married, but I'm just going to throw it out.
Driving to Nebraska, not so fun.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. Anyway, I'll keep mine short. I've been playing Infect, and I don't play a lot of Vintage, so that's me.
Are you thinking about putting something together for Vintage?
For Vintage, no. I'm actually I had a choice to either fly in for Vintage and play without power, or spend a day in Orlando hanging out with my brother. So I decided to do that instead.
Aww.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I enjoy going like turn 1 Blood Moon, did I get you? You know, I feel like I could be doing better things on that day. So.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Maybe next year, or like if I win the lottery or something, I'll go buy some power. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna tell you to get Alpha Power and White Border.
Anyway, so moving on, So I think we spent a lot of time talking about what we've been doing recently, but let's set our eyes on the future, see what's up ahead. We've got a big tournament coming up in the form of Eternal Weekend, and I kind of want to run through with you guys sort of what I do in preparation for these larger tournaments, but also kind of want to get, y'all's thoughts and plans. I thought it would be a good idea to talk about what decks we've been playing, because that really adds a lot of like an extra dimension to like what we're about to start talking about, or like for us to give examples, you'll know where we're coming from. But at the same time, I think a lot of this just kind of goes across all decks. It transcends all deck lists and all players and stuff like that. And there's just a lot of stuff here that you'll kind of need to keep in mind, or you'll probably learn yourself if you end up playing a lot of these bigger events. But yeah, I guess kind of going chronologically, like a couple of months out, one thing I really like to do is start to keep an eye on like bigger tournaments and stuff. And so one thing that's kind of happened that's really interesting was in the last year or so, Star City Games made a shift to having a lot of constructed events, or team constructed events, excuse me. And so what that means is like, we're not going to have like Sunday Legacy Opens like we used to back in the day, but at the same time, we're always going to have some Legacy going on, And there's always that small caveat of like, well, this legacy deck looks bad. Maybe the standard and modern guys won every single game, for like 14 rounds, and this guy went 0-14. But data is data. Yeah, like, right. I definitely see some decks, and I'm just like, no, your teammates are probably just really good. But, there's like some data there. One of the other really cool things that happened, GP Richmond, the one that followed Reed Duke around while he was doing while he's playing Grixis Control, and he would talk through every single match. They would have him on camera between rounds, sort of talking about his matchups and his sideboarding plans and how he felt about certain things. That was a really awesome event. If anybody from WotC's listening to this, do that again, please.
Yeah, do more of that.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Just watch the Legacy stream like all Sunday. It was a lot of fun.
Exactly. Yeah.
Playing on NASCAR's TV too. Like, just right around.
And like, don't prove me wrong or don't point out any examples, but like, I don't think I've ever met anybody who doesn't like Reed Duke. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, I think everyone loves him, but also anytime I watch a video of his, like he posts videos on Channel Fireball fairly regularly. Anytime I watch them, I feel like I'm suddenly a better Magic player. Like,
oh, absolutely.
He knows what he's doing.
It's kind of incredible because on the one hand, you feel like you're a better Magic player, but you also feel like you could never catch up to him,
Oh, yeah.
Like, no matter what I do, it's like the asymptotes of skill. Like, you'll never quite reach the Reed Duke level, even though every time you watch him, you get closer and closer.
It's inspiring and demoralizing at the same time.
Right.
Like, you should really go out and see some really shitty punk bands and be like, I can do better than that.
All right, Sean. So get us started on getting prepped.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of like to sort of keep an eye on these things, and one of the big things you want to look for is like sort of these big meta shifts. Like we've already talked about how far off we were in our predictions from the last Lone Star Legacy podcast. And we were talking about Rook Delver's going to be king, Death Shadow's dead. Miracles might be a deck. D&T, might have some staying power. Like, it's so ridiculous, looking back on it now. But, if you've been watching the metagame for the last couple of months, you would know, like, Miracles is a real deck. Grixis Control is probably the best deck in the format, or, close to it, if not the absolute best. And Death Shadow came back in a big way, the other big one was Pro Tour Anniversary 25. And I think that was the breakout tournament for the Blue-Black Death Shadow deck. It was, I think it was LSV's team and Josh Layton's team were the two kind of Fireball teams, like, playing that deck. And even though they kind of had like as they called it, like a bad matchup against D&T, they still managed to go really, really far in the tournament. And I think I think Josh Layton made it to top 4 with that deck. Something like that. He made it like really, really far in that tournament. And then like since then, it's sort of been like this mainstay. I didn't get a chance to link it to you guys earlier today, but like I have this sideboard map from about a year ago when I was going to Eternal Weekend in 2017. And it's funny because there's a lot of the same decks on there. We still have our Black Red Reanimators. We still have our Sneak and Shows. We still have our Grixis Delvers. But notably, the sideboard looks completely different. And also, when I say like Grixis Delver, that's a completely different deck. When I say like Reanimator, that might have been Blue-Black Reanimator. I don't even know at this point, The decks change, and the decks that don't, like, all the decks change, and the decks that don't change sometimes get subbed out for, like, different decks. And so, like,
sideboards have really changed a lot in the past couple of sets.
Right.
They don't they don't print as many new cards that slide into as many legacy decks, but there's been a lot of sideboard silver bullet heavy cards printed in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think they realize that's where a lot of development room is just sort of like these niche fringe playable cards. You've got like your Goblin Crater Makers and your like Trash Masters and stuff. And those are like, oh yeah, these might slot into a single archetype as a one-of, because you don't want to print the next Delver of Secrets. That's like, oh, wait a second, we accidentally revolutionized combat math. Yeah, it's terrible.
This is the most aggressive non-merfolk creature in the game.
Right. Yeah. And so you're definitely right. Well, there's going to be a lot of like just sort of like small fringe playables like trickling in. But that's another good point. Like the cards,
like Alpine Moon, just is like Tron and Random Land Hate, and that 1 mana black sorcery or instant that just kills Eldrazi from M19. Like
Infernal Reckoning.
Yeah,
is that what it's called?
Yeah. Liliana's Defeat is actually showing up in a lot of Grixis sideboards. just because
so
it's a clean
embarrassing.
answer to Death Shadow and Gurmag Angler, you know? And you would never have expected that otherwise. It also, I think it hits Lily on a Planeswalker, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, it's just like these weird sort of niche cards always have a way of like making their way into the metagame.
It's their way of kind of avoiding a lot of the power creep you might see in other games.
Right.
Like they don't print the new thing to phase out the decks. They just see what they don't like and print things to kill that.
Right. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with any sort of coverage. I find a lot of like free time on weekends, but I've kind of been watching a lot of this. Do you guys have any thoughts on it? How the metagame has evolved like in the last, say, 2.5 months since the Gitaxian Probe, Deathrite Shaman bannings?
My impression is that
we've done a podcast since then, but it's just the most excited so many people, like in our little Houston group, and a lot of people on Reddit and other forums have been excited about Legacy in a while. Like it's opened up a lot of niche decks that a lot of people didn't see too much play, but they're suddenly playable again because the Scourge of Deathrite Shaman, or you don't have to play a bunch of probes because probe is banned, so that frees up cards in your deck to play new things. Like Goblins is back. Goblins. Wait,
is Goblins back?
I
keep seeing it pop up. I don't know.
Night, man. I used to say that Death for Murloc,
if it's playable.
I used to say that Death and Taxes was my worst matchup, and looking back on it, I'm like, I have a shot with Death and Taxes. It can be an uphill battle a lot of the time, but I never had a chance against this Goblins guy. Not a chance.
Yeah, I guess Pile Driver seems like a bit of a beating.
It's a beating.
Yeah.
That's true. Just got pinned. He's so great. He's a Lord and Sideboard card all at once.
It's basically True Name Nemesis if you really squint your eyes while looking at it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. The meta has definitely opened up a lot, which I think is a very good thing from like a place perspective. But on the other hand, it's like, I have to worry about so much fringe shit now. Like, I don't know how to design a sideboard.
Sideboarding is harder, but you get to play what you love.
But it was so great when it was like a homogenized metagame that I was like, yeah, I got to worry about these 4 decks, and that's it. No problem. You know, I got to worry about my Reanimators, my lands, my Grixis Delvers, and then maybe like my, like Swords and Plowshares decks. That's it. And then now everything's like freed up now.
Got too much of that. Like the last couple years, like kind of feels stale.
Oh no,
like,
I definitely
never know what's going to be across the table now.
I definitely agree with you. I was just being facetious. I think a wide open metagame is like a great thing.
Isn't this the Grinder's complaint about Modern?
What's that?
That it's a wide open metagame and you never know what you're going to face.
I've heard that, and I don't play Modern, so I don't know how true it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if you've heard it,
I mean, it's never been an argument. It's not an argument I necessarily buy into, just because, like, I mean, I think it's more of a problem in Modern because they don't have safety valves like Force of Will, but it is interesting from a tournament prep standpoint if you have to be prepared for 10 or 11 rounds of Legacy, but you have no idea what like 60% of your opponents could be on.
Right. I mean, you could pack like generic Graveyard Hate, generic Artifact Enchantment
Hate. More for archetype hate than any specific deck, like Graveyard Artifact. Lots of creatures on the board, stuff like that.
I think that's just like EDH optimism coming from you, though, because you're used to having 100 cards.
Except I still don't play enough Graveyard Hate. That doesn't.
Yeah, no one ever does.
When it comes to that.
Sean, I was like actually considering putting a Melira in my board for Eternal Weekend, just because like every time I play a big event, I play Infect at least once, and I always lose to it, even when I have a good matchup against it. So
the last time Stu and I played in a sanctioned tournament was a win-a-duel at Asgard Games in Houston, and this is like this, like I don't know, I know the guy because he's like good friends with one of our locals, Ben Kendrick, and this was like. I had seen him in person like maybe 5 times in my life. And then game 2, he just goes like Green Sun Zenith, X = 2. And I'm like, yeah, that resolves, right? Like, I don't care about like a Gaddock Teague or something. A Melira comes down, I'm just like,
what?
Yeah. Sometimes sometimes a card comes down and like, you know, like an Ensnaring Bridge hits the board and you don't have a way to get it off. But you got to keep playing to pretend like you might have something boarded in. And you just spend turn after turn after turn looking at that fucking Malira, trying to like figure out as much as you can.
Like that's a symptom of our little meta, though, because you were known as the infect guy, like that you'd have to see twice a week.
Look,
Yeah,
like,
it was like
Malira in your board.
it's not my fault.
It
I'm
was
a
a super,
traditionalist. Okay.
it was a super trashy move.
No, dude, that was awesome. That's like one of my favorite stories. I still tell that to people. Like, I don't know.
Well, so to keep us like moving along, though, given that it is a pretty diverse and wide open field, how do you guys construct a 60 and a 75 for Legacy Champs or some equivalent event? What's on your mind right now for what you need to beat?
Yeah, so I mean, we did get a bit off track there, but one thing I wanted to make the point of was like with these big tournaments coming up, you should typically be able to like establish who your public enemies number 1 through like 10 are at any given point. And so like for a sideboard map, I usually go to like MTG top 8 and look at like the top 15 played most decks, you know, from any given archetype. I think on that list you've got like your Grixis Controls, Blue Black Shadows, Miracles, Death and Taxes seems to have like a pretty large metagame penetration for some reason. Well, I mean, I know why. It's good and it's like not expensive to build into. But like those are going to be like, yeah, those are going to be like the best decks you have to deal with. And then like, you know, on top of that, you also have like your combo decks, your Reanimators and your Sneak and Shows for sure. But also maybe your Storm and maybe your Belcher and stuff like that. I think sideboarding for Belcher feels kind of weird. You would just probably have like more generic combo hate. But then like, so like, yeah, I don't know. Your top decks, your top meta decks, your graveyard decks, and then, or not graveyard decks, like your combo decks, which I guess are a lot graveyard and Sneak and Show at this point. And then after that, like, I don't know, whatever you hate losing to.
Like some graveyard decks like Sneak and Show, it kind of goes in the same vein. It's like, oh, they've cheated some giant monster to play. Got to deal with it. You can try and get as much hate that goes in multiple different decks. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
When I played Nickfit, it was mostly like, here's the 9 cards in my sideboard against things that I just cannot deal with. It'll shit on me all day. And 6 other things, just varied regular sideboard cards. Like, you don't know what you're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Like, if you're playing Nickfit, you probably want, like, some number of Crowstand Grip, or some number of, like, Golgari Charm, some number of just generic catch-alls.
Charms from RTR were just the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, each one was, like, its own valid sideboard card and had 3 modes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I as a Merfolk player in Legacy, I hate losing to Death and Taxes, and it's a pretty bad matchup. So I have dedicated quite a bit to the main deck and the sideboard. There's a lot of cards in there.
What does that look like?
So, for Phantasmal Image, because making my own Stoneforge Mystic to try to get back ahead and get rid of the Batter Skull is 90% of the time when I win, it's because they never got to Batter Skull. It's such a backbreaker for me. I think it's even worse than like the Sophie, the sort of Fire and Ice kind of route. So what I'll do is I'll have the 4 Phantasmal in there, try to make my own, and get my Jitte or my Manriki Gasari. And also,
you're playing Manriki Gasari?
Yes, sir. And also, I've started
sick.
playing 2 Grip of Pharisees, the one that steals the enchantment. I mean, it steals an equipment.
I don't know that word is always impossible to pronounce.
Yeah, it steals an equipment and creates a 0/0 germ token, and you attach it to it. So it can be a pretty big blowout against Death and Taxes or Stoneblade or whatever. So that card right there is a little specific, but it's such a beating that I think it's worth me dedicating 2 sideboard slots to it. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I think that's totally okay. Like, even from a like an optimizing a deck list perspective, you might think to yourself like, oh, that might be too many cards, or like I played against you with the Stoneforge Mystic deck pretty recently, and I was like, Jesus Christ, why is he bringing 14 cards in? But like, if you know that's what you lose to, and like whatever it is about your playstyle is conducive to like beating other decks, but you have trouble with Stoneforge Mystic decks, like build a sideboard that's like tailored to you. You know, it doesn't have to be net deck. Just because it worked for Owen Turnwald or Reed Duke doesn't mean it's going to be something that you're going to want to play as well. You know, like I think that net decking is always a great place to start, but at the same time, it's like the ideal is to build your own deck. And if you end up in the same place as like some of these notable pros, that's great. You know, it doesn't really mean anything. It's not good or bad. It just means you have similar playstyles to them. But sometimes you just end up in like radically different places, and that's okay too.
Also, the pros played Throne of Gath in their deck, so if they did that, you're allowed to play like anything you want.
And now it costs like $5.
Anything goes at this point, right? You can like dig through the bargain bin.
They thought they were so fucking smart with that move, right? I bet the first guy to play it, his smug face after doing that. It's just like, oh my god, you think you're so clever.
But you would be too, right? Like, who wouldn't?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the first week, like after that got spoiled, like some people citing that in, you know, like half a dozen like local tournaments, like people just got blown out or confused as hell. Like, this card exists?
Yeah.
Can I read that? Sorry, can I see that real quick? Okay. So I apologize. I was supposed to be moderating this, and I kind of forgot until just now. We've been way off topic. I've got like an outline right here, and I just haven't followed it at all. But
yeah, where are we on the outline?
We have already crossed through every single point. We have touched on everything.
I think we
it's been a good call, guys. Let's wind it down.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. No, I mean, if you guys want to take a look at this right here, but like the first three things I like to do before going to a tournament, obviously I was talking about like research, looking at like you know, any big tournaments that happen. I mentioned like some SCGs, GP Richmond, stuff like that. The other thing is like meta shifts, which are, you know, can be in the form of like bannings or just like new card printings. And I think all of us have kind of recognized, like, those are easy to identify. It's like Gitaxian Broman, Deathrat Shaman got banned. That's going to shift the meta. Battle Bond got printed. That might shift the meta. You know, M19 got printed, mostly reprints, but, you know, always has the potential. Commander 18, Guilds of Ravnica. Anytime there are new cards introduced into the metagame, there's a potential for, like, a meta shift, you know? And I think, like, for the most part, nothing's really changed. But I think, like, obviously some cards have made their way into play, but there hasn't been anything like super dramatic. Anyway,
Assassin's Trophy is like probably the big question mark right now.
Right. Like Assassin's Trophy. I think like Knight of Autumn might see play in some sideboards, but I do want to talk about like new cards in just a second. One thing I wanted to bring up real quick, sort of as like the first couple steps I like to take. I like to look at these about a couple of months out of the tournament. I also like to set a goal for myself, which I actually think is something really important that a lot of people don't do. I went to, I think it was GP Seattle this past year, did not set a goal for myself, and I don't know, I maybe thought I was going to win the whole thing. I scrubbed out with like 2 and 4, and then I was just like, no, that's it, I'm done, I'm miserable. I don't want to play Legacy Infect in a field full of Grixis Delvers. It's a terrible idea. But there's nothing wrong with like going there just to have fun, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's even an argument that when you make that your goal, you're not only are you more likely to have fun, but you might even play better. We've talked about this on a few episodes before, but when you're not, if you're not necessarily like taking it as seriously, you might be able to play a little bit more fluidly, and I feel like get into sort of a special zone. So goal setting.
The stress of grinding isn't going to get to you as much.
Right, exactly. And obviously, like, you know, that's not true for everyone. There is a certain subset of people who is going to be motivated by having a high expectation for themselves.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think it's fair to say that none of us are trying to get on the Pro Tour or anything like that. Yeah, probably.
Is there going to be a Vintage Pro Tour?
Probably not. Sorry.
50th anniversary?
Yeah.
The coverage.
Doesn't seem like it. But, I mean, you know, we all, in some ways, are lucky enough to not have that pressure on us, you know. We get to go to Eternal Weekend to play Magic, you know. We're not going there specifically to, like, win, you know. Whether, I mean, and I don't know. I don't think anybody's counting on this income from like winning and like taking the store credit and then like paying their rent with it or something like that. But like you go there to have fun. It's a vacation.
I think prizes from like the Pro Tour is a whole other can of worms that we can get into. Recent articles.
Yeah, and I don't really want to talk about that right now, but
let's not get into that.
Exactly. There are other things to talk about, but we're not going to go there.
My goal is always to like at least like break even, like do like 2-2 in locals, so I feel like I played games, did okay, or at least like win more games than I lose at like big tournaments, and I can feel happy about that. But when you're at the big events and you feel like that's a reasonable goal, and even if it doesn't work out, there's side events, artist signings, trading, all kinds of stuff to occupy your time.
North American Commander Championships.
Will, I agree with you, and I think
Commander is such a weird, different game than like your local game store.
I agree with you, Will, that's an admirable goal to have, and I think that's probably the correct viewpoint, is to shoot for 50-50, basically. I find that in practice, I'm never actually satisfied when I do that, but if you can make that your goal and then afterwards, like, still feel good about it, that's great. I think last year,
but like at the big, like you go to some 200-person tournament, like you got to be able to make peace with if that's how you did.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the caliber of players at these events is going to be pretty high. So if you go 50-50 against them, that says like pretty good things.
For myself, I don't want to have any major punts. Even if I go, 1-4 drop or whatever in either of the events, I really I don't mind losing to variance. I don't ever want to try to attempt to attach equipment to a phantasmal image ever again, because I've done it twice. I've done it twice, and I won't ever do it again. But I don't want to have anything on that caliber of, because I don't know, like I do enjoy the elevated level of competition. I like I do like the challenge. I like knowing that the guy, the girl across from me is going to be most likely a little more experienced than your average person at your weekly tournaments. I like the higher cash investment. I like the fact that we all have traveled, from out of state to be there. I like the higher stakes every once in a while. I don't have to travel, many times a year, but I like to get out there every once in a while. I like what's coming up.
So I think I might have shot myself in the foot here, because we're kind of all on the same page, and I think we all kind of accept that, like, we're just here to have a good time. We play Magic and then sometimes win prizes, not like we play Magic to win prizes.
Right.
I think that's like a combination of our age and like just our level of investment and showing us the game at this point.
I like to think so, but on the other hand, I think we don't really have a lot of like, I don't know. I consider myself like one of the spikier people in sort of our group. And even then, I'm just kind of playing the same deck year in, year out. Like, if I really wanted to optimize like my deck choice, that's another thing. Like, we don't really have anybody in this group who's kind of like that. But like, if you really wanted to like have the best chance of winning this whole thing, I think like a lot of the prep work you do is looking how the metagame is going and then deciding on a deck like a couple of weeks or like maybe a couple of months out from the tournament, and then deciding like that's the way to go. Like, okay, I'm going to get good at Grixis Control, or I'm going to get good at Miracles, or like I'm going to get really, really good with like Blue-Black Death Shadow. These are sort of like the top tier decks right now, and I want to feel really, really comfortable with one of these. So like a so-called tier 1 deck, as opposed to something like, I want to get really good with like Scapeshift Nyx or something, which, I don't know, deck is fun, but it's not like, I don't think anybody would think that is their best chance of like winning a tournament.
I think it was on the bullet point, but when you play the deck you're most comfortable with, you can kind of tweak that based on your meta.
Yeah,
like
that's a very good point.
You go over the MTG top 8 lists, recent Grand Prix finishes. What I've liked recently is watching publishing all their 5.0 legacy deck lists from Moto. You can kind of see like what's being played, what's popular, what's just really killing it right now, and like adjust your deck accordingly. And I used to play a lot of Nick Fit, and Nick Fit kind of teaches that by playing just all the one-ofs and like a dozen tutor effects. So like main board, you can tweak it to kind of deal with everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's very toolboxy in nature.
Just adjusted to what you think you're going to see.
I think Nick Fit is a very interesting example because of like, and even Maverick kind of has these tendencies as well to be very toolboxy by nature because you're playing your Green Sun Zeniths. You know, you can customize, and build the deck like almost exactly how you want to. You can say like, you know what, I want like multiple main deck scavenging uses because I hate losing to Reanimated, for example. Not that would really help you. You could play like, I don't know, main deck Fairy Macabres or something. Or you could say like, you know, I really want to find a way to beat like, what's that?
I really love Fairy Macabre.
Oh yeah, card is great.
My favorite side.
No doubt about it. Like, nice chance for the Annex. I'm still exiling it. But yeah, that's a very good point to make, that playing a deck that you know is often, especially in Legacy, like very often just the right decision, as opposed to picking something that's like going to be optimal or going to be top tier or whatever. And you guys can probably see where we skipped around a bit now, but I think after you've picked a deck, you kind of want to start like hammering out what cards are exactly going into it. And every Legacy deck has like a core, which I think for Rug Delver is going to be like 54 cards, all the way to like Nick Fit, which is just like, you want 4 Veteran Explorers and 4 Cabal Therapies. And that's it. And then that's like probably like one of the most flexible decks out there. But I don't know. New cards come into the metagame
now.
What's that?
It's less flexible now since they banned top. So you're kind of trapped in the bug shell. You got to play. But yeah.
Well, it seems like you're cutting out just a little bit. I'm not sure if that's something that you can fix, but
I don't know.
Yeah, no worries. I'll tell you if it happens again, but you know, just be mindful of that. Yeah, I mean, talking about new cards, and Stu, this is kind of where I kind of wanted to get your opinion, because I think like new can mean a lot of different things, and obviously, I think the most basic understanding of that word is just like new cards. What was printed in Guilds of Ravnica, you know, or what was printed in Battle Bond, or what was printed in, I don't know, Ixalan, whatever the most recent sets were, right? Like you have these cards that, for whatever reason, have been printed and can find their way into the metagame. And you need to decide, like, is my Knight of Autumn better than my Reclamation Sage? Is my Assassin's Trophy better than my Abrupt King, you know? And of course, you got to compare that not only to like what's already in the deck, but like what the metagame is going to look like going forward. Oh, okay, whatever. I'll keep going. Let's do it. Is he talking?
Yeah, he's muted.
Oh.
Or maybe
I kind of see his lips moving.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yo. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Okay. So this podcast is gonna be so high quality.
I know. Right?
On the note of Knight of Autumn, I think is like essentially a strict upgrade over Rex Sage. Like the only corner case scenario where it's not is if your opponent is playing something like Blood Moon or Back to Basics. And even then, if you're green sunsing for it, it's still the same as Rex Sage. But yeah, in Maverick, I think that's just an auto upgrade. Assassin's Trophy is a more difficult one. I was wondering about that card, so then I asked on the Source Maverick thread, and what was pointed out to me is that Maverick is a mana denial deck, so you probably don't want to play a card that gives your opponent a land. Which, you know, there's still arguments for it, because obviously Maverick, for example, is weak to something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor. But, which, you know, Assassin's Trophy can deal with. But I think that's just illustrative of the fact that there's a lot of angles to think through. And I think when you're trying to figure these things out on your own, it can be easy to miss some obvious points. So having some playtesting friends or some buddies who know the same deck as you can be really beneficial if you're trying to evaluate new printings and figuring out where they slot in. At the same time, probably the most valuable thing you can do is obviously just jam a lot of games and learn if the card is good. My time, as I mentioned, is currently at a bit of premium, so I haven't been able to do any testing with Maverick, and with that, I haven't tried out Assassin's Trophy. But at least having someone to bounce ideas off of, whether that's a stranger on the source or someone else, actually, in real life, is useful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know I kind of hate to kind of keep going to you, but I actually have had a lot of Maverick questions, and I know you've been like kind of busy recently. But the other style of, I guess the other way new cards can be introduced to a deck is if you have some big meta shifts in the form of, say, I don't know, Gitaxian Probe and Deathrite Shaman get banned. And then, of course, like...
Hypothetical?
Yeah, just, it might happen, it might not, we never know. But assuming it does, where do you go from there? A lot of people talk about, we're falling back on Noble Hierarchs now because they're the second best mana dork in the format, and they don't produce black, so we should cut black entirely from the deck. Mm-hmm. Things that might have been, not viable beforehand, like, I don't know, like, would you ever play like a Council's Judgment or something? Versus like a Maelstrom Pulse, which are doing like very similar things, but like, all of a sudden that becomes a new consideration. Whereas like when you had black as a mainstay of the deck, you didn't even think about that. Or, I don't know, spitballing here, but like, there are probably new cards that have gained some validity just because, like, not because like they weren't good beforehand, but it's just because they didn't quite fit that current iteration of the deck.
Yeah, so was there a specific question?
Okay, that's okay. Fair point. Could have phrased that a little better. I wanted to ask you if there are any specific cards that you are now considering going into Eternal Weekend that were never on the table before.
Yeah, I don't know about never on the table, but my immediate reaction when, and I think this is probably true of most Maverick players, when Deathrite got banned was to be like, oh, got to go straight green-white. We don't have Deathrites to support black, and now we have to figure that out. And like, we're cutting black. Suddenly we have to have more cards to address combo because we don't get to play cards like Duress. And you have to be like, oh, we don't have Deathrite for Graveyard Hate. And now I need to load up on Graveyard Hate in my deck. But I think, Magic players have a tendency to way overreact to either bannings or new printings.
What? No way.
No, not
that. That happening.
B, I think we also tend to forget that just like experience is key. So my immediate reaction was like, I have to go green-white, but I didn't have a fourth Savannah. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep trying to play junk for a sec and see what happens. And my experience was between having a Scrubland, a Bayou, and a Birds of Paradise, I could essentially always make black when I needed it. Mm-hmm. So with that, Sorry, what was that?
I mean, Elves of the Deep Shadow, just not good enough.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, and it's like, when Deathrite got banned, everyone was like, oh, Hierarch is now the best mana dork. Just replace 4 Deathrites with 4 Hierarchs. When it wouldn't be unreasonable to do like right now I'm on 1 Birds and 4 Hierarchs, but doing a 2-3 split of Birds and Hierarchs would be reasonable. Also, if you're worried about accommodating Black Splash. But I guess, yeah, the point I'm making about like cards I wouldn't consider in the past, there's nothing I'm playing now that I wasn't playing before, but I am more comfortable than I thought I would be with. For instance, I'm now playing 3 Duress. I was only playing 2. I'm playing 3 Zealous Persecution. I was only playing 2. So yeah, my feeling about Maverick specifically is that people kind of overreacted about splash colors. But I don't think there's been any, other than Night of Autumn, there haven't been any printings that I'm like super eager about.
Right.
Ramanop was out last year at Eternal Weekend, and I played that, and I think I might actually cut it, but nothing else comes to mind really.
And I think like Assassin's Trophy was the other big one, but as you said, like that's not really a card you want to include. if it's going, like, even though it is in a vacuum a very strong card, it's kind of going against what your typical game plan is, which is like mana denial, set up a couple of wastelands and some Thalias, and then just kind of bully them out with like bigger threats.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Assassin's Trophy is a great card, and like I said, with something like Jace, it definitely answers things that junk colors might struggle with, but Abrupt Decay is still a really good card. I think
It can be counter a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I came to appreciate that card a lot during the Deathrite era when there was lots of like Grixis Delver around, and it was just like, oh, there's this flip Delver beating the shit out of me. I'm gonna lose to this. Oh, I have this uncounterable way to get rid of it. It's obviously not mana efficient when you're killing a Delver, but it's nice to know that like I can answer something definitively.
Right, like you can tap out for things against the Delver deck and know that they're going to resolve.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Sean and Tim, I can't think of any new printings you guys would have had.
Mist Caller, Merfolk Mist Caller. It's the one that kind of turns off. It's like the one shot. Cleric. What is it?
Yeah.
It's a real card?
It was from
Containment Priest.
Yeah.
Containment Priest kind of effect.
Yeah, yep. And you also got Merfolk Trickster if you were feeling that.
Right. No, I think so. My combo matchup is already pretty good. I don't think I would try playing the Mistcaller. Yeah, I mean with Curse Catchers and Forces and Dazes and Chalice and some stuff out of the sideboard, my if I just saw nothing but combo over the course of the whole tournament, I would be very happy and I think I would be going pretty deep in the tournament.
Yeah.
I'm nothing makes me happier than see Sneak and Show sitting across from me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wait, Tim, rules question. This is probably an obvious one. If your opponent casts Show and Tell and puts in Emrakul and you put it in a Phantasmal image, can the Phantasmal image hit the Emrakul?
No. It's not a trigger, so it won't, as it's coming into play, it won't see the Emrakul there.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So I think say like when this comes into play, do X.
Right.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Learned something new today.
Sean, any Infect printings?
Printings, no. But as we were kind of talking about earlier, I think with the way the meta is shaped up, there's been a lot of interesting new considerations. I think the best new printing that we got was Shaper's Sanctuary from one of the Ixalan sets. It's a single green enchantment that just says, like, whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell or ability, you get to draw a card. So, like, the drawing card half of lethal, basically. And so I think that's been really, really key in dealing with some of the grindier decks of the format. Red-Green Lance has been on the downswing, but being able to draw a card every time they maze your creature or Punishing Fire or, you know, try to target your stuff in any way has been really, really good. One of the interesting things, and this kind of goes back to looking at like big tournament results, this is something I never really considered, but in one of the most recent SUGs, there were a couple of copies of Infect in the top 32. And notably, these decks were all playing sideboard threats, which is something that I had never really considered before. Because most of the good Infect creatures are already in the deck, you know? Listener Elf is great in your unfair matchups where you want to race combo. Blighted Agent is great against creature decks. Inkmoth Nexus is great against control decks, you know? Or anything with big sweepers. Your Miracles playing their Terminus. Your black-based decks playing their Toxic Deluge or whatever. And honestly, you only need like 12 threats in a deck.
Radiant Corruptor is pretty much the only other one, right?
Right, and that's like kind of niche. I know some people have played that like main deck, but people are never playing like more than one copy of that card. Which, you know, if there was a better creature, we'd probably play it, but I just don't think there is one. With Infect, at least. And so what was one really interesting thing that people have been doing is that they've been playing... I saw one guy with like 2 True Names in his sideboard, and I'm not 100% on that, but it kind of got me thinking, like, maybe there's a card that's like really good that people haven't really considered as a sideboard threat for Infects. And the other one I saw, I think, was like...
what it is?
What's that?
Can I guess what you chose?
I will tell you, it was not Great Sable Stag or True Name Nemesis, which were the 2 that I saw represented in that top 32.
All right. I'm gonna guess it's Mystic Snake.
I like it.
No, Mystic
River-
Snake.
River
Around the
Hoopo.
last troll.
No, Mystic Snake only sees play in Snake and Show, which is it's Sneak and Show, and then you sneak attack your Mystic Snakes, and it's a work in progress. But maybe someday when I've like won a GP or something, I'll build that deck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's a
Sean, have
top-down
you
design.
have you given a good look at mission briefing for Infect?
I have.
It might seem nice, kind of casting Invigorates and Berserk from the yard.
So yeah, mission briefing is interesting. I know the Hipsters of the Coast podcast was talking about that earlier today, or maybe some days ago, and they released the podcast today. Whatever the case may be, but I'm not too high on it, in fact. And one of the big reasons for that is I actually think double blue is surprisingly hard to hit with that deck.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing your, on average, 19 lands. 4 of them are Inkmoth Nexus. 1 of them is a Wasteland. And then you have your Formidable Hierarchs. I think most people have figured out that they need to kill the Hierarch on site at this point. Or, you know, like, do something about it.
Is that what I'm supposed to do?
Yeah, with Merfolk especially, you know.
I'm losing to this stupid deck.
Wrong, all these years.
Yeah, I mean, Nova Hierarch is good. I think most people know that by now. It's just anything that cheats on mana and Legacy, Surprise, is really good. But, you know, outside of those, it's not really that many colored sources. And so, as much as I like mission briefing, I think, like, that dream scenario of, like, flashing back, or not even flashing back, but, like, recasting Invigorates from the graveyard is a little bit of a pipe dream. Okay. And it's the same thing happened with Jace Vryn's Prodigy, where his flip side, the Telebeth Unbound Planeswalker, has, like, a -3 that lets you, like, cast cards from your graveyard. It's like, yeah, cool, you can cast Force of Wills for their alternate cost, or you can play Invigorates for their alternate cost. And it's like, you kind of have to jump through a lot of hoops to play Invigorate number 5 and 6. And at that point, is it really worth it? I'm leaning towards no, but I'm also really bad at, like, evaluating cards. Like, I'm a net decker through and through, so.
Which, on that note, sorry I derailed you about your transformational sideboard.
Oh, my what?
Your transformational sideboard. What is the actual non-true name, non-mystic snake, non-great stable sag?
2 thoughts. It's Great Sable Stag. For the longest time, I thought it was Great Stable Stag, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why does a Great Stag live in a stable? Answer, it doesn't. But yeah, it's called Great Sable, S-A-B-L-E. Who knew? Probably everybody else listening to this podcast. But I've narrowed it down. The list originally was ridiculous. Like, it had Mystic Enforcer on there, which is a 33 from Odyssey. That was 6/6. Yeah, and it had protection from black. And that was, okay, that's the thing. Protection from black is really, really good if I'm trying to beat Grixis Control. So my 2 final, like, candidates, I guess, that I'm kind of trying to narrow it down to. One of them is Thrun the Last Troll, which I think he's quite good for a number of reasons. Can't Be Countered is great in Legacy, which plays a lot of blue.
Thrun is the stone cold nuts. He can't be countered. He doesn't die to removal because he's loud, and he regenerates from combat.
Exactly. And if I have like a Green Sun Zenith or something, it's like, nice Terminus, you know, I'm going to play it again and put it back into play. He just seems to do a lot of really interesting things. The other threat I was considering is Chameleon Colossus. No, don't laugh. Okay, this card is the truth. I think this card might be the truth. It is a 4/4 for 4, which is already unplayable in Legacy. It has protection from black. You care about Gurmag Anglers. You care about Baleful Strixes. Keep in mind, this is just a card that's going to see play against Grixis Control. Like, I don't really need it against, like, Miracles. I feel like that matchup is already pretty good. And against, like, something like lands, I think it's a little bit on downswing. This is specifically a card for Grixis Control. Protection from black will protect it from Fatal Push, and it is out of bolt range at a 4/4, and it cannot be blocked by Gurmag Angler, which is bigger than it, and it cannot be blocked by Baleful Strix, which has Death Touch. It has an ability that doubles its power and toughness, and I'm playing a deck full of pump spells. I attack with this guy. If they do not flash into Sapcast animation to block it, I invigorate it, and then I activate its ability. It becomes a 16/16. A 16/16. That is bigger than an Embercool. That is the biggest thing in Legacy. How do you deal with that? And I know you guys are going to say they got Diabolic Edicts, the Leon of the Veils, Jason the Mind Sculptors. You're not wrong, but I think it is very, very difficult for Grixis Control in particular to deal with this card. So I'm giving it some serious thought. And if the deck picks up more steam, Grixis Control picks up more steam before Eternal Weekend, I don't think it would be a bad inclusion at all.
And it's a changeling, right?
It's an elf.
So it has all creature
People
types?
care about that.
I haven't found a way to abuse that yet, but if we can include a singleton like Cavern of Souls in the deck, you know?
Or include a singleton Blink Moth Nexus, and then you can pump both your Ink Moths and
All right, I feel like y'all are making fun of me here.
No, I'm not.
This is a safe space, you guys. I was told I could open my heart out to you guys, and that I wouldn't be laughed
I'm
at.
on board for this. I think this is a great plan. One other option, if you want to go super left field, is just to include a Natural Order Progenitus package in the deck, but that's probably doing too much. That's like 5 slots, so you probably don't want to do that.
I mean, 5 slots for how many wins, you know? Like, if I got to devote 1/3 of my sideboard and I just get to style on people with Progenitus, it might be worth it. Again, we're going to rewind a little bit to, like, what are my goals for this turn?
The look on their face.
What's that?
The look on their face when that happens.
Exactly. If my goal in this tournament is just style on people with Progenitus while playing Infects, like, I think that is the optimal strategy, is to just play 1 single Progenitus and 4 Natural Orders in the sideboard.
Anyway. Yeah. And so I don't know if we got an answer out of you guys earlier. Maybe I stepped out of the room when it came up. What are your goals for the tournament? What do you want to finish it out at, or do you not care?
And I'll just say this: in Legacy, I'd like to play it all the way through. I think I'm just, even if I'm doing poorly, I'm gonna just fight through, play the whole thing through, and try to avoid any major punts. In Vintage, I just really want to have a blast and do some crazy broken stuff. You know, beat cast 3, draw 7s on my opponent's first upkeep sort of stuff, and go from there. And maybe pick up a few wins. That's basically what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I just want to cash this year. I played my round for top 64 in the final round of Swiss last year, and I was dead tired at that point. And I mean, I don't know if you guys were there. It was like 10 rounds, 11 rounds of Swiss. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was just such a grind on the brain, and I barely missed out on that. And so I think this year, really, it's just improvement, So if I didn't cash last year, I'm looking to cash this year. Then the year after that, maybe make top 32. A couple years in the future, maybe we'll try and top 8 the whole thing. Nice. Prepare for the best, expect the worst is kind of how all these things go.
Like, you always want to top 8 or make a bunch of money, but if you go 6-5 at 11-round tournaments, you could at least live with yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to go there and, I think I now have Tim Nightmare in my head. I don't want to go on camera and then just punt and have Twitch chat laugh at me.
Oh, that is everyone's nightmare.
It's gonna keep me awake at night.
Yeah, I'm terrified of getting a camera match.
Yeah.
And Twitch chat will judge you for the most inane stuff. Oh, your sleeves look dumb. Why are you playing that art of that card? You just stay with the Twitch chat.
The poor Miracles player in the Champs Finals 2 years ago, he got so much shit because he had some pocket chocolate that he was taking out during.
Oh no!
I bet he's quit.
No, that dude has a sideboard plan. He's the kind of person who comes to this event prepared. I would be worried if my opponent pulled out some pocket chocolate. I'd be like, oh my god.
Oh no!
They need that sugar and caffeine.
Yeah, he probably knows my 75 and exactly how to play against it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that dude knew what he was doing. That's why he made it to the finals. But Twitch is just vicious. So, my goal. I don't have a goal for Legacy. It's essentially to have fun, unless I do poorly in Vintage, in which case Legacy I want to have be my rebound event. Legacy last year I came in 69th, so I missed cash by 5. So
nice.
But you get cash, but 69th.
Yeah, I know. It was sick. And Vintage, I'm coming off of I came in 13th at the Power 9 series, so I would like to do some type of play. I'd like to place on some level this year. I don't know if that's top 32 or top 16. But at the same time, I mean, like we were saying, when you do set a specific goal like that, you're setting yourself up for disappointment potentially. If I say my goal is top 16 and I come in 40th, then I'll be bummed, which is kind of dumb. So I don't know. I guess I'm going to say top 32 is my goal, but I don't really know.
And didn't you, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you top 16 at CGCon this past year?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see. At the same time, it's like, again, since I haven't been playing much lately and I'm on like sleeping a little bit less lately, maybe I shouldn't be setting high expectations for this. So we'll see. I guess I should just say that I want to have fun.
There you go.
Calling it now. Stu's gonna win vintage champs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Like this is
there's no way I'm so bad against shops and pretty bad against paradoxical, and those are just going to be rampant. So
maybe
that's the only player. So
maybe you find a way to dodge those like the entire tournament.
That's what I did at SCGCon. So
okay. One final thing I wanted to touch on in regards to the tournament itself, and we got a couple things to kind of wrap up with after that, but there's sort of this idea that is a little bit more abstract. I don't know if you guys have felt this way before, but at any given point, there's like a subset of cards that you kind of have to play around at all times. And I'm kind of thinking about like recently there's been a trend of including back to basics in any deck playing islands, like basic islands, and that's not trying to kill you like on turn 2, like Sneak and Kill, for example. And so like you've seen this blue-white Delver list come out with like Owen Turtwald's been sporting that. You've seen like Andrew Cuneo's all basics Miracles lists. I think he was playing his main deck. Some people were playing from sideboard, but like you got to watch out for like main deck back to basics too. Really all kinds of like Stoneblade and stuff like that. I've kind of realized the power of this card. And so going into Eternal Weekend, I think like that, for example, is one of the big cards you're gonna have to watch out for. And I don't know how else to describe this other than just like watch out for like emergent play patterns. But I think that's something you should really be paying attention to, both in your local metagame and on like the tournament scene. What kind of cards and like what kind of haymakers people are bringing in for like in their main deck or like that are pretty common in sideboards.
Stuff like Leyline of the Void. Like, even like you see 4 main deck Leyline.
I don't know about main deck, but I've definitely seen a lot more like sideboard Leylines popping up. And if you're like
the worst thing is that it's Dredge that plays in the main board.
I don't know about that. That seems a little bit. I guess it like stops your opponent from triggering like the bad from Bridge for Below
before you.
Yeah.
Like, all these like random playable cards, it's just like, oh, you just don't get to play Magic against them anymore. So you have to always be prepared or have answers in your sideboard. Because if it happens, you just don't get to play the game. And like back to basics, you play a bunch of non-basic lands and non basics to fetch 4 just in case. Like you're just completely locked out.
Yeah. And like they absolutely should be playing that card because it's fantastic in this metagame. But at the same time, like I think if you're preparing for a tournament, you need to have a plan against like you need to play with these cards in mind. Like I don't know. Sometimes you just tap out for a big card and they'll just go like, okay, that resolves. Untap, slam it back to basics. You're like, oh, my Haymaker's a 4/4. Yours is I don't get to play Magic for the rest of the game. So I think you're gonna win that one. And I don't know. It's like I'm having a tough time kind of grouping these together. The other one I've seen a lot of recently, I find Daze appearing in a lot of decks. And I don't know if that's just like a local thing, but like I know Daze has been appearing in Ad Nauseam Tendrils lists. I know it's been appearing in some Miracles lists, specifically because nobody's expecting it. Like I don't think it's good in that deck, but like people are just like, yeah, you know, sometimes I just want to play Miracles and have some earlier interaction. I'm gonna jam a couple of Dazes in there. Like a deck that wants to be hitting all its land drops probably shouldn't be returning to hand. Even Sneak and Show has been playing like Dazes here and there. And you know, I think this is one of those cards that I'm not sure if it's like a flavor of the month thing, or maybe people are just realizing that this card has a lot more applications than trying to play a tempo strategy with like Delvers. But whatever the case may be, like that's another card that I think if that's not on your radar, it's going to get you.
It's kind of been a joke for years, like, oh, you didn't play around Daze or you didn't play around Stifle, but it's coming from a true place.
Right. And I've seen like Grixis Delver lists. In the most recent SCG, somebody did pretty well with the Grixis Delver list sporting 1 Stifle. Like, that's been an Infect thing for a long time. People are always playing around 1 Stifle against Infect. It's like, maybe they have it, maybe they don't. If I can afford to play around it, I will. Now Grixis Delver is doing it too. And
so evil.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like worse to not expect it and just like run headfirst into it, or if it's worse to like think it might be there and just like play around it for the entire game. Because you kind of have to like hold up your fetch lands at ideal times. You can't wasteland in critical spots. You can't like slam a Stoneforge Mystic into like an open island anymore. Whatever the case may be, though, like all of a sudden, all these things have to go.
It's that old proverb, like better to have something and not need it than to need something and not have it. Like you, just to be aware of it and try and be careful.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's ideal, but you could also just end up playing around a stifle that doesn't exist and lose the game because of it.
Well, that's always, that's like the extra level of that is people will have like one stifle and then board it out in games 2 and 3, but you sit there time walking yourself because you're like, oh, my fetch is going to get stifled.
Right. Or they'll like correct their fetches preemptively and then like realize they can't shuffle away with brainstorms later on.
Yeah.
So whatever the case may be, just watch out for these like, I don't want to call them like fringe cards, but like fringe applications of cards, or like the haymakers of choice. Yeah, I mean like the back to basics and like those random days and stuff like that. I think that'll really get you. Like people are starting to realize that back to basics is better than Blood Moon in a lot of cases, and I think like they're definitely correct in that assessment, and that it's going to be like that for like the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Okay. So the tournament itself, I think Tim and Stu, you guys were both at Eternal Weekend with me last year. Do you guys have any thoughts on how that tournament went?
I like loved that they did 11 rounds in one day. I'm a little bit bummed that they're breaking it up into 2 days. Primarily just like 2 days itself isn't that bad, but the way they're structuring it is 9 rounds day 1 and then any remaining rounds day 2, which is probably just going to be 1 to 2 rounds, which is to me. So like when Tim was talking about goal setting, he was saying that he always wants to play out the whole event, or that's what he wants to do with Legacy. That's like my thing I try to do with every big event because I want to know where I finished out, like regardless. So it's frustrating to me that I'm going to have to play like 9 rounds, and then if I'm doing well or doing shitty, I have to like spend 2 hours on Sunday playing Magic, which is just like an annoying way of doing it. But other than that, so I enjoyed the 11 rounds last year, but and every single tournament player will tell you this, but it's obviously important to eat and sleep and stay hydrated. In my case, I also heavily caffeinate because I'm in daily life already a huge coffee addict, and when you're putting a big strain on your brain every round, I think that's important. Basically every 1 to 2 rounds, I try to do one of those combinations of things, which is either eat something, drink water, or drink some caffeine.
Yeah, and I think it is fair to say that like having a plan going into big events like this is really important. Like, I don't know, I've definitely found myself bringing like snacks, for example, or like if the venue will let it, maybe like a bottle of water or something, or at the very least like locate the nearest restrooms or the nearest water fountains, which for those of you going, there is a water fountain on the first floor of the David Lawrence Convention Center. So, kind of track that down before your tournament starts. And if you finish a round early or your opponent doesn't show up, you can absolutely go there and grab a sip of water to stay hydrated.
Importantly, pack a
available is going to be like $10 hot dogs.
What's that?
You never know, like the only food available is going to be like $10 hot dogs or pizza vendor food.
Oh yeah, I mean there's like stadium food in there
for you, and it's super expensive and not going to keep you.
Last year, their convention center food wasn't as bad last year. I enjoyed the chicken tenders.
And it's fine. It's not going to like hit the spot. No one's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. David Lawrence Convention Center chicken tender is my favorite. But in a pinch, you can absolutely go to like a vending machine or something, or like as Stu was saying, they serve a couple of like hot food items there. I'm sure there's always a guy selling pizza or something, but at the same time, be mindful.
You make a dinner reservation for after the event because like you're not going to enjoy your food for like 18 hours of the day, so have a good meal that night. There's been a lot of like, I don't mean to be dramatic with this, there's been a lot of like kind of complaining about Eternal Weekend online lately because there's a subset of people who like were upset about the water situation last year, amongst other things. But on the water note, definitely bring a reusable bottle or like buy a bottle of water, and after you drink it, keep it, because water fountains in general at Magic events are not always easy to come by. So just like make sure you always have a bottle with you instead of having to constantly like go just to get 2 sips of water.
Yeah.
Tim, how do you navigate being a smoker during an event?
I play combo.
Yeah.
No, so a lot of about half of the times I will I don't know. I've been amping up my smoking kind of recently, but I think what I'll try to do again is get some nicotine lozenges and use those throughout the day, and that combined with just like regular chewing gum is enough to like get me through the day, and yeah. Or maybe I should just quit smoking and not just constantly be killing myself with poison every fucking day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's my job to kill you with poison.
That's good.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. Smoking is one thing. If you got to take your smoke break, go for it. I have like diabetic friends and stuff. You know, it's not uncommon for them to have a plan going into like any large event. It's like I got to peace out and like, you know, test my blood sugar and like prick my finger or whatever. And it's like, for them, that's like second nature. But like, there's no reason, if you're going to a magic event, there's no reason you shouldn't have a plan, you know? Mm-hmm. So like when you wake up in the morning, what is your routine going to look like? If you're sharing a room with some other people, like I have seen people fall out over like who gets to shower in the morning before like, you know, day one rounds start. And it's like one guy takes an hour and a half in the shower. Like figure that out, you know? Make sure you know exactly what's going to happen, what time you need to eat breakfast, be at the convention center, and leave yourself plenty of time. There's no reason to like be late for these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other experiences in the area? I in particular seem to remember a lot of pub food, but I don't remember what any of it tasted like. I was wondering if that's correct.
Last year, you and I went to dinner after Legacy Champs, and that place was pretty good.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the best place I've ever had, but it was solid.
Mm-hmm.
And also the last morning, Tim, Patrick, and I got brunch at this place. So then I made a dinner reservation for there for Friday night. The Austin group and I are gonna go eat there, which their menu looked pretty good. So hopefully it works out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pittsburgh like gets a lot of shit. That was one of the other like dramatic components online complaining about the event, but I actually like Pittsburgh. I think it was,
yeah.
If you do some research in advance, I'm sure you can find a lot of good stuff to do. But the other thing is just like when you're at a Magic event, unless you're like Sam Craven and decide to 0-3 drop every event, you're gonna like spend the majority of your time. So like it's not that important what the city is like anyway, because you're probably doing a combined total of like 6 hours outside of the convention center.
Now, I think speaking of pub food, it should not have to be said, but don't get trashed the night before your tournament.
Yeah.
All day and miserable.
Agreed.
You'd think people would know that by now, but, you know, like maybe if I go hard on the alcohol tonight, I won't have a hangover tomorrow, right?
I mean,
can you get a good Bloody Mary in the space between getting up and showered and being at the tournament? Like, if not, you're going to be miserable all day. And it's going to affect your play and your attitude to your opponents.
Sure. I mean, so don't get drunk the night before, I guess.
Yeah. Obviously, for some people, this is their vacation and they're just going to hang out with their buddies. So, like, the tournament is like a secondary or tertiary consideration. In which case, like, yeah, do it up, go get hammered. But like,
oh sure, yeah.
Don't get really drunk each night and also have a goal to do well. And yes, you're like, there's a small percentage of the population who can do that, but I'm not one of them.
No, I mean, I don't think I can top it without getting drunk. So,
yeah, old big drinker Sean here.
Yeah,
the Zen drunken kung fu state of magic.
Yeah, right. I mean, some people claim to be able to do things better when they're like a little bit tipsy. So maybe there's like this peak performance point of like perfect blood alcohol concentration.
Yeah,
carefully regulated throughout the day that makes you play really optimally.
There is, but you're not going to achieve that by drinking the night before. And like, unfortunately, unless you sneak in a flask or something, you're probably not going to be drinking during champ. So like, I do think that there's a point, like it's somewhere between 1 and 6 beers. I don't know what the line is. Depends who you are. There is a point where you get better, but I don't know what the number is.
Yeah.
All right. On that cheerful note, do you guys have anything else to add? I think we've touched on most of what we wanted to talk about. But any final thoughts about Magic itself or the upcoming tournament or Pittsburgh or anything like that?
I have one. Most of us will probably be wearing some form of Lone Star Lhurgoyf gear during the weekend, so we're easy to identify. Last year, one of the nice components of Eternal Weekend was people coming up to us and saying hi and saying they listened to the cast or just like whatever. And it's always good to meet people. So, yeah, say hi to us if you're at Eternal Weekend. We'll be around.
Yeah, for sure. It's really cool meeting new people. Or, I mean, I say new people, but like we've got a couple of, I don't want to say out-of-towners, but like the Austin crew, for example. I don't know many of those guys too well, but it's always good hanging out with them, you know? And this also happens occasionally, but like at bigger tournaments, we'll run into people wearing Lone Star Lhurgoyf t-shirts who are not from Houston or Austin. They're like, oh yeah, like I saw the order form. Yeah, I saw the order form and I thought they looked cool, so I decided to pick one up. You know, that's totally fine too. Like,
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're I dare say we're a pretty amiable bunch. So
Inclusive.
Yeah.
that is yes, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I mean, feel free to say hi if you see any of us wearing these shirts. Not just us on the podcast, but anybody wearing one of these shirts. I promise you, like, they're not going to bite. They're all cool guys and girls, and so, you know, swing by, say hi.
Except him.
Yeah, that's why we like hit his face, right?
Yeah, but we can't see Tim, so they're not going to know which one is Tim.
That's true, yeah. Now,
I will say, though, quick story about us going to Eternal Weekend last year. As I'm sure you guys remember, but anybody listening might not remember, this was about when Hurricane Harvey hit us. That was about in August. And then Eternal Weekend was not too long after that in November. I was wearing my Lone Star Lhurgoyfs t-shirts. So everybody knew. It's like, oh, yeah, you're from Texas. You know, you're probably a Houston or Austin-based Magic player. What really stood out to me, and this was incredible, but everybody was asking me, like, hey, how are you guys doing? How is everything over there? You know, and it was just like this completely unanticipated, unexpected show of, like, caring from, like, the Magic community. You know, it's like these people I never met before, but they're like, yeah, I've seen you on a podcast. Is everything all right? You know, I know things have been really tough over there. Like, thankfully, nothing happened to me, but even hearing that, like, outpouring of, like, you know, we're here for you, or, you know, if anything happens, please let us know. Like, that was really incredible to hear from the Vintage and Legacy communities.
It's one of the great things about the Magic community is they're there for a lot of people that if something awful happens to someone, like, the community can step up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, recently, one of the major YouTubers had some awful herniated disc back injury, and they were able to raise a lot of their medical bills through a GoFundMe from postings on Reddit and other major Magic personalities. Like, the community cares about the members and the people that provide content for them, and they're just glad to step up.
That said, please don't talk to us about Ted Cruz.
Oh, God, no.
This is not that kind of podcast. So, on that note,
Yeah.
We got so far without...
Shut it down. No.
Shut it down. All right, you guys. Sean Liu here with Tim Everett, Stu Yarnick, Will Mievshin, Lone Star Lhurgoyfs. We will be, well, 3 of us will be at Eternal Weekend in November in Pittsburgh, and we hope to see you all there. You guys have anything you want to say? Sign-off phrases? Do we have any sponsors?
See you at the commander tables, Will.
And by commander tables, he means hell.
Yeah.
I think competitive commander can be like hell.
Good night, guys.
All right. It's been fun, everybody. We'll see you guys later.